The massive doors of the Galactic Military Academy gleamed under the artificial starlight. Inside the training complex, alien warriors from dozens of worlds practiced their deadly arts. The Academy was famous across the galaxy for producing the finest soldiers, pilots, and commanders known to any civilization. In the deepest level of the Academy stood a chamber that every student feared. The gravity chamber was a perfect cube, 20 meters on each side, made from reinforced steel that could withstand incredible pressure. Warning signs in 12 different languages covered the entrance. The door itself was 3 meters thick and required special authorization to open. For over 300 years, the gravity chamber had served one purpose. It was the ultimate punishment for students who broke Academy rules. Inside, gravity could be increased far beyond what most species could survive. The chamber had broken the spirits of countless warriors. Many who entered came out forever changed, their confidence shattered. The current record holder was Commander Thraxi Kor, a legendary warrior from the Thraxi Empire. His people were known for their incredible strength and thick armored skin. Even he had only lasted 47 minutes at 10 times normal gravity. The experience had left him unconscious for 3 days. Most students could not even stand at 5 times gravity. The Krillian berserkers, famous for their rage-fueled strength, would collapse within minutes. The graceful Vextai, who could leap between buildings and move like shadows, became helpless under increased gravity. Even the Zorathi, with their cybernetic implants and mechanical enhancements, found themselves crushed by forces their technology could not overcome. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood before the chamber door, reading the warning signs with interest rather than fear. She was the first human ever admitted to the Academy. Her arrival had caused quite a stir among the staff and students. Humans were a new species to the galactic community, having only made contact 5 years earlier. Most aliens viewed humans with polite curiosity. They seemed unremarkable compared to the galaxy's warrior races. Humans were not particularly strong like the Thraxi, not especially fast like the Vextai, and lacked the technological integration of the Zorathi. They appeared to be average in almost every way that mattered for military service. Sarah was 25 years old, with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She stood only 1.7 meters tall, making her shorter than most of her classmates. Her build was lean but muscular, though not impressively so by galactic standards. She wore the standard Academy uniform, which looked almost comically large on her small frame. The other students often whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. They wondered why the Academy had accepted a human at all. Some felt sorry for her, believing she would never survive the training. Others were simply curious about this strange new species that claimed to come from a world called Earth. Sarah had requested access to the gravity chamber 3 times in her first week. Each request had been politely denied. The Academy staff explained that the chamber was not for training purposes. It was reserved for disciplinary action only. No student had ever asked to use it voluntarily. On her 4th request, Sarah had gone directly to Commandant Vex Kral, the Academy's commanding officer. The tall, blue-skinned Vextai had looked at her with 4 golden eyes, his expression unreadable. "Human," he had said in his melodious voice, "do you understand what the gravity chamber is designed to do?" Sarah had nodded calmly. "Yes, sir. It increases gravitational force to test physical limits." "Test?" Vex Kral had tilted his head in the way his species did when confused. "Lieutenant Chen, the chamber is not a test. It is punishment. It is designed to break the will of those who enter it." "I understand, sir, but I believe it would be useful for my supplemental training." The Commandant had stared at her for a long moment. Finally, he had granted her request, more out of curiosity than conviction. He wanted to see what would happen when this small human faced the same force that had humbled the galaxy's greatest warriors. Now Sarah stood before the chamber, as Academy staff prepared the systems. Senior Instructor Thraxi Moore, a cousin of the record holder, operated the controls. His massive stone-like hands moved carefully across the interface. "The chamber will start at normal gravity," he rumbled in his deep voice. "We will increase it slowly to 2 times normal. When you can no longer continue, signal for extraction immediately. Do not try to be heroic. The chamber has killed students before." Sarah nodded and stepped inside. The chamber was empty except for a few basic exercise equipment pieces built into the walls. Sensors in the floor and ceiling would monitor her vital signs. Cameras would record everything that happened. The door sealed with a heavy thud. Sarah stood in the center of the room, testing her balance and movement. Everything felt normal. She could hear the hum of the gravity generators coming online. Increasing to 1.5 times normal gravity, Thraximore announced through the speakers. Sarah felt the change immediately. Her body grew slightly heavier as if she were carrying a heavy backpack. She walked around the chamber, testing how the increased weight affected her movement. To the watching instructor's surprise, she seemed completely unaffected. "Interesting," muttered Dr. Yilzen, the Academy's chief medical officer. The insectoid being's compound eyes tracked Sarah's movements through the monitoring screens. Her heart rate has increased only slightly. This is within normal exercise parameters. Increasing to 2 times normal gravity, Thraximore announced. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of increased weight. It reminded her of the training facilities back on Earth, though those had been primitive compared to this advanced technology. She began doing basic exercises, jumping jacks, push-ups, and running in place. The watching instructors exchanged glances. Most species would be struggling to move by now. Sarah was exercising as if nothing had changed. Her vitals remained stable, Dr. Yilzen reported. "This should not be possible." "Perhaps the equipment is malfunctioning," suggested another instructor. Thraximore checked his instruments carefully. Everything was working perfectly. The gravity field was definitely at 2 times normal. He had tested it himself just yesterday, and even his powerful frame had felt the strain. "Request permission to increase to 2.5 times normal gravity." Sarah's voice came through the speakers. The instructors looked at each other in amazement. No student had ever requested more gravity. They all knew the dangers, but they also knew that 2 times normal should have been challenging even for a healthy specimen. "Granted," Vexkral said after a moment. "Proceed with caution." Sarah continued her exercises as the gravity increased again. She could feel the difference, but it was still manageable. Her bones and muscles had been shaped by a world where such forces were common. What these aliens considered punishment gravity was merely uncomfortable weight to a human. For 30 minutes, Sarah exercised under 2.5 times normal gravity, while the Academy staff watched in growing amazement. When she finally signaled for extraction, it was not because she was exhausted. She simply had other classes to attend. As the chamber door opened and Sarah stepped out, barely breathing hard, the instructors realized something important. Their understanding of human capabilities had been completely wrong. This small, unremarkable-looking being had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. The real question was, what else could humans do that the galaxy thought was impossible? Word spread through the Academy faster than light-speed communication. The human had done something impossible in the gravity chamber. Students gathered in small groups whispering about what they had heard. Instructors spoke in hushed tones during their meetings. Everyone wanted to know the truth about Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Dr. Yilzen spent 3 sleepless cycles reviewing the sensor data from Sarah's session. Her compound eyes moved rapidly as she analyzed every piece of information. The readings were clear and consistent. Sarah had exercised normally under gravity that should have crushed her. "The equipment must be broken," insisted Instructor Vorkek, a cybernetic Zarathi warrior. His mechanical eye whirred as it focused on the data displays. "No organic being can function normally at 2.5 times gravity." "I have checked every system twice," replied Dr. Yilzen. The gravity field was accurate. The sensors were functioning perfectly. The human actually performed better than our baseline measurements suggested she should. Commandant Vexkral entered the medical bay, his 4 eyes reflecting his concern. The Academy had protocols for everything, but no protocol covered a student who treated punishment as training. "Doctor, I need to understand what happened in that chamber."
"How is this possible?"
Dr. Yilzen displayed a holographic image of Sarah's scan results. "Commandant, I believe we have seriously underestimated human physiology. Look at these bone density readings." The hologram showed Sarah's skeletal structure in detail. Her bones were nearly twice as dense as the galactic average. They were not just thick, they were compressed and hardened in ways that seemed impossible for a natural organism. "These readings suggest adaptation to extreme gravitational stress," Dr. Yilzen continued. "Her muscle fibers also show unusual characteristics." Another hologram appeared, showing Sarah's muscular system. The muscle fibers were tightly packed and showed signs of constant stress adaptation. They looked like the muscles of a warrior who had trained in heavy gravity for decades. But Earth's gravity is listed as standard in our databases, Vorkek objected. Dr. Yilzen pulled up the original contact files from humanity's first meeting with the galactic community. The human diplomats described their world's gravity as normal during first contact. Our translators assumed this meant galactic standard. No one thought to measure it directly. Are you suggesting that Earth's gravity is not standard? Fex Kral asked. I am suggesting that what humans call normal might be very different from what we call normal, Dr. Yilzen replied. I need to run more tests. Sarah was summoned to the medical bay the next morning. She found herself surrounded by scanning equipment and curious alien doctors. Dr. Yilzen explained that they needed to better understand human physiology for training purposes. Lieutenant Chen, can you describe the gravity on your homeworld? Dr. Yilzen asked. Sarah thought for a moment. Earth's gravity is about 9.8 meters per second squared. We just call it normal gravity. Why? Dr. Yilzen's mandibles clicked in excitement. She quickly converted the human measurement to galactic standard. The result made her step backward in shock. Your homeworld's gravity is 1.4 times galactic standard, she announced. You have been living in heavy gravity your entire life. Sarah looked confused. But the Academy uses galactic standard gravity everywhere except the punishment chamber. That's why everything feels so light here. I thought that was normal for space stations. The doctors exchanged meaningful looks. Sarah had been operating under reduced gravity since arriving at the Academy. What they considered normal was actually easy mode for a human. We need to test this properly, Dr. Yilzen decided. Would you be willing to undergo more chamber sessions under controlled conditions? Sarah nodded eagerly. Can we try higher gravity levels? The last session was interesting but not particularly challenging. Not challenging? Vorkek's mechanical eye sparked with disbelief. You were under 2.5 times standard gravity, which is only about 1.8 times Earth gravity, Sarah explained. I've worked out in heavier conditions before. The next test session drew a crowd of observers. Academy instructors, medical staff, and even some advanced students gathered to watch the monitoring equipment. The chamber was prepared with the most sensitive instruments available. Sarah entered the chamber wearing full monitoring gear. Sensors tracked her heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, and brain activity. Every movement would be recorded and analyzed. Beginning test sequence, Dr. Yilzen announced. Starting at galactic standard gravity. Sarah moved around the chamber performing basic exercises. To her it felt like moving underwater. Everything was too light and too easy. Increasing to 2 times standard gravity. Sarah's movements became more natural. She began doing push-ups and sit-ups with obvious comfort. Her vital signs are completely normal, reported a medical technician. She shows no signs of stress, increasing to 3 times standard gravity. This level had never been used for training. It was beyond the safe limit for any known species. Sarah continued exercising as if nothing had changed, increasing to 4 times standard gravity. Now Sarah was experiencing nearly 3 times Earth's gravity. She slowed down slightly but continued moving with purpose. Her form remained perfect as she performed military exercises. This is impossible, whispered one of the watching students. She should be unconscious by now. Increasing to 5 times standard gravity. Sarah paused for a moment, then began a series of combat drills. She moved through fighting positions, practicing strikes and blocks that would have been impossible for any other species under such conditions. Her heart rate has increased, but it's still within acceptable exercise limits, Dr. Yilzen reported. This is like watching someone exercise normally, except she's under enough gravitational force to crush a Thraxi warrior. Sarah spent 2 full hours in the chamber at 5 times standard gravity. She performed every exercise in the Academy's fitness manual. She ran, jumped, and fought against gravity that should have pinned her to the floor. When she finally emerged from the chamber, she was sweating and breathing hard, but she walked out under her own power. The watching alien stared at her as if she were some kind of supernatural being. How do you feel? Dr. Yilzen asked. Tired, but good, Sarah replied. That felt more like a proper workout. Can we try 6 times next week? The medical bay fell silent. Sarah had just asked to increase the gravity to levels that would instantly kill most of the Academy's instructors. Dr. Yilzen pulled up Earth's file in the galactic database. The planet was listed as a Class M world, suitable for most carbon-based life forms. But now she understood the truth. Earth was not a normal world. It was a high-gravity death world that had produced a species adapted to conditions that most of the galaxy considered lethal. "We need to reclassify Earth immediately," she told Commandant Vex Kral after Sarah left. "This is not a standard world. This is an extreme environment that has produced an extreme species." Vex Kral looked at the test results again. "Doctor, if one human can do this, what does that mean for the rest of their species?" "It means," Dr. Yilzen said slowly, "that we may have severely underestimated humanity's potential as warriors." The implications were staggering. If every human possessed Sarah's natural advantages, then humanity was not a weak new species seeking to join the galactic community. They were potentially the most physically capable warriors the galaxy had ever encountered, and they had just introduced themselves to the universe. News of the humans' incredible performance spread beyond the Academy within days. Communication networks across the galaxy buzzed with reports of a species that could function normally under crushing gravity. Some dismissed the stories as exaggerated rumors. Others demanded more information about these mysterious beings from Earth. Sarah found herself the center of attention wherever she went. Students stared at her in the corridors. Instructors watched her with new respect and barely hidden concern. She had become something between a celebrity and a scientific curiosity. The Academy's senior staff held emergency meetings to discuss the implications. If humanity possessed natural advantages that significant, it would change the balance of power across known space. Every military leader in the galaxy would want to know more about human capabilities. "We must establish new training protocols immediately," Commandant Vex Kral announced during a staff meeting. "If Lieutenant Chen's abilities are representative of her species, we need to understand how to train with humans, not just train humans." Dr. Yil Zen presented her latest findings. "I have been analyzing Sarah's performance data. Her strength and endurance under high gravity suggest that her people evolved specifically for these conditions. Earth is not just a high-gravity world. It is an extreme environment that has shaped every aspect of human development." Senior instructor Thraxi Moore shifted his massive frame uncomfortably. "Doctor, are you saying that humans are naturally superior warriors?" "I am saying that humans are adapted for combat conditions that would incapacitate most known species," Dr. Yil Zen replied carefully. "Their advantages become more pronounced as environmental stresses increase." Sarah had requested daily access to the gravity chamber. The Academy granted her request, partly for research purposes and partly because they were curious to see her limits. She had established a routine that amazed the staff and terrified some students. Every morning at 600 hours, Sarah would enter the chamber for 2 hours of training. She had systematically worked her way up to 7 times standard gravity, nearly 5 times Earth gravity. At this level, she could still move and fight effectively, though her movements became more deliberate and controlled. Her training sessions drew regular audiences. Students and instructors would gather to watch the monitors as Sarah performed impossible feats under crushing gravitational force. She had turned the Academy's punishment device into her personal training facility. "Watch this," Sarah said during one monitored session. She was operating under 6 times standard gravity, wearing full combat gear that would have crushed most aliens even under normal conditions. She moved through a complex martial arts routine, her actions fluid despite the incredible force pressing down on her. Every punch and kick was perfectly controlled. Her balance never wavered, even when executing techniques that required her to support her full weight on one foot. Her combat effectiveness under extreme gravity is actually superior to most species under normal gravity, observed combat instructor Zektal, a veteran Vextai warrior. "She has weaponized gravitational force itself." Sarah's innovation went beyond simple endurance. She had begun developing new fighting techniques that used high gravity as an advantage rather than an obstacle. She showed how a warrior adapted to heavy gravity could generate incredible striking power when the gravity was reduced. During one demonstration, she asked Dr. Yilsen to reduce the chamber gravity to galactic standard after an hour of training at 6 times normal. The transition was spectacular. Sarah suddenly moved with speed and agility that seemed impossible. Her strikes became lightning fast. Her jumps carried her across the entire chamber. "This is what happens when someone trained in high gravity fights in normal gravity," she explained to the watching instructors. Everything becomes easier. Every movement has more power. The implications were terrifying to consider. A human warrior trained in extreme gravity would have enormous advantages in normal combat conditions. They would be faster, stronger, and more agile than opponents who had never experienced such training. Word of Sarah's abilities reached the Academy's advanced combat instructors. Master Sergeant Crix Vor, the Academy's most respected hand-to-hand combat teacher, requested a sparring session with her. The grizzled Krillian warrior had trained champions from dozens of worlds. "I want to understand these human advantages," he told Commandant Vex Krull.
"Combat data tells us much more than medical scans." The sparring session was scheduled in the Academy's main training hall.
Nearly half the student body gathered to watch. It would be the first time a human had faced one of the Academy's master instructors in direct combat. Crix Vor was an impressive opponent. Standing 2.5 meters tall with thick armored skin and muscles like steel cables, he had never been defeated by a student. His species were natural warriors bred for battle across countless generations. Sarah looked tiny standing across from him. She wore standard sparring gear and moved with calm confidence. The size difference was almost comical, until the match began. Crix Vor attacked with the speed and power that had made him legendary. His strikes could shatter stone. His movements, despite his size, were precisely controlled. He expected to end the match quickly with overwhelming force. Sarah moved like water around his attacks. She was faster than he had expected, but more importantly, she was stronger. When their strikes met, the impact sent shockwaves through the training hall. Crix Vor found himself being driven backward by the force of her attacks. "Impossible," he growled, increasing his effort. "How can something so small generate such power?" Sarah explained while continuing to fight. "High gravity training. Every muscle in my body has been compressed and strengthened by forces you've never experienced. What feels like normal strength to me is enhanced strength to you." The sparring session lasted 15 minutes. Crix Vor, who had never shown fatigue in combat, was breathing hard and sweating. Sarah looked like she was just warming up. "Enough," Crix Vor called, stepping back. "I understand now." He turned to address the watching students. "This human fights as if she has trained her entire life under conditions that would kill most of us. Her species does not simply adapt to extreme environments. They thrive in them." After the sparring session, Sarah's status at the Academy changed completely. She was no longer seen as a curiosity or an inferior being trying to keep up with superior species. She was recognized as something far more dangerous, a member of a warrior race that made extreme conditions look easy. The other students began treating her with respect mixed with caution. Her alien classmates started asking her to help with their training. They wanted to learn how to push their own limits the way humans apparently did naturally. Sarah was happy to help, but she pointed out the fundamental problem. You weren't born on a world that forces you to be strong just to survive. Your species evolved under easier conditions. I can teach you techniques, but I can't give you the bone density and muscle development that comes from growing up under heavy gravity. Dr. Yilzen continued her research, but now with a new focus. She wanted to understand not just how humans could function under extreme gravity, but what other impossible conditions they might have adapted to survive. If Earth's gravity shaped them this much, she told her research team, what other environmental factors made them what they are? What else can humans do that we consider impossible? The answer to that question would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be a warrior. But for now, Sarah continued her daily training sessions, pushing toward the theoretical limits of the gravity chamber while her instructors wondered if even those limits would be enough to challenge a properly motivated human. The Academy had thought it was training alien warriors to become better soldiers. Instead, it was learning that one of those aliens was already something beyond their definition of what a soldier could be. Senior archivist Mel Gorth had spent 400 years maintaining the Academy's historical databases. The ancient Talarian scholar had seen empires rise and fall, but nothing had prepared him for the research request from Commandant Vex Krull. You want me to search for references to high-gravity species in the historical archives? Mel Gorth's tentacles moved nervously across his data interface. Sir, those records go back over 10,000 years. Most are incomplete or corrupted. Search anyway, Vex Krull ordered. Focus on any mention of warriors who could function normally under extreme gravitational conditions. Mel Gorth began his investigation reluctantly. Ancient databases were notoriously unreliable. Many contained legends and myths mixed with historical facts. But as he dug deeper into the oldest files, patterns began to emerge that made his skin change color with worry. References appeared in fragments across dozens of civilizations. Stories of death-world warriors who could fight in conditions that killed normal soldiers. Legends of beings who treated crushing gravity as a minor inconvenience. Tales of a species that had once challenged the greatest empires in the galaxy and won. The more Melgorth researched, the more disturbing the picture became. According to the ancient records, these gravity warriors had not been peaceful. They had been conquerors who used their natural advantages to dominate other species. Their empire had stretched across thousands of star systems before mysteriously disappearing. "Commandant," Melgorth called nervously, "I believe you need to see this immediately." Vexkral arrived in the archives to find Melgorth surrounded by holographic displays, showing ancient star charts, battle reports, and military analyses. The Talarian's usual calm demeanor had been replaced by obvious agitation. "Sir, the historical records contain extensive documentation of a species called the Gravitech Empire," Melgorth explained. "They dominated this region of space approximately 8,000 years ago." Vexkral studied the displayed information. The Gravitech had possessed technology far beyond most civilizations of their time, but their real advantage had been biological. They were described as beings who could fight effectively under gravitational conditions that paralyzed their enemies. Their military tactics were based on environmental warfare. Melgorth continued. They would lure enemy forces into high-gravity environments, then attack when their opponents were helpless. They were nearly impossible to defeat using conventional strategies. "What happened to them?" Vexkral asked. "That's the mystery, sir. The records show that they simply vanished. Their empire collapsed overnight. Their worlds were abandoned. Most historians assumed they had destroyed themselves in some kind of civil war." Vexkral felt a chill of recognition. "Melgorth, do these records contain any physical descriptions of the Gravitech?" The archivist pulled up several ancient images. They showed bipedal beings, roughly humanoid in appearance with dense bone structure and compact muscular builds. The resemblance to human physiology was unmistakable. "Sir," Melgorth said quietly, "I believe the humans are not a new species to our galaxy. They are the descendants of the Gravitech Empire." The implications hit Vexkral like a physical blow. Humanity had not simply evolved on a high-gravity world. They were the genetic descendants of the galaxy's most feared warriors. The species that had once dominated known space had returned. Meanwhile, Sarah was pushing her training to new extremes. She had successfully completed sessions at 8 times standard gravity, and was requesting authorization to try 9 times. The Academy's equipment was approaching its operational limits, but Sarah showed no signs of reaching hers. Dr. Yilzen monitored each session with growing amazement and concern. Sarah's performance at extreme gravity levels was not just surviving, she was thriving. Her combat effectiveness actually seemed to improve as gravitational forces increased. "It's as if she was designed for these conditions," Dr. Yilzen told her research team. "Her species doesn't just tolerate extreme gravity, they use it as a weapon." Sarah had begun developing new training techniques that incorporated gravitational manipulation. She showed how a warrior could use varying gravity levels to enhance different aspects of combat performance. Light gravity for speed and agility training, heavy gravity for strength and endurance development. "On Earth, we have a saying," Sarah explained during one training session. "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." My people have been living by that principle for thousands of years. The watching instructors exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to understand that humanity's casual approach to extreme challenges was not a cultural quirk. It was an evolutionary survival trait developed on a world that killed the weak. Commandant Vexkral called an emergency meeting of the Academy's senior staff. He shared Melgorth's research findings with Dr. Yilzen, the combat instructors, and the senior military advisors. "If this historical analysis is correct," Vexkral announced, "then we are not training a new ally. We are hosting the return of our galaxy's most dangerous warrior species." "But the humans seem peaceful," objected Instructor Thraximore. "They requested membership in our academy. They followed our protocols. Lieutenant Chen has been respectful and cooperative. 8,000 years ago, their ancestors were anything but peaceful," Vexkral replied. "They conquered most of the known galaxy using advantages we are only now beginning to understand." Dr. Yil Zen studied the ancient records carefully. These historical descriptions match Sarah's physiological advantages perfectly. Dense bone structure, enhanced muscle development, adaptation to extreme gravitational stress. The Gravitech were described as beings who could function normally in conditions that incapacitated other species. "Are you suggesting that Lieutenant Chen is dangerous?" asked Combat Instructor Zektal. "I am suggesting that Lieutenant Chen represents a species that once ruled the galaxy through superior combat capabilities," Dr. Yilzen replied. "Her individual performance indicates that those capabilities have not diminished over time." The meeting was interrupted by an alert from the training complex. Sarah had just completed a session at 10 times standard gravity, matching the previous record for survival time, except she had been exercising normally while the record holder had barely survived. "She's not trying to set records," Dr. Yilzen realized. "She's still just training. This isn't her limit, it's her comfort zone." The group watched video footage of Sarah's latest session. Under gravitational force that should have crushed her, she moved with fluid grace. She performed combat drills that would have been challenging under normal gravity. Her vital signs remained stable throughout the entire 2-hour session. "How many more humans are there?" Vexcrawl asked quietly. Dr. Yilzen consulted the galactic contact files. Earth's population is listed as approximately 8 billion individuals. The room fell silent. 8 billion beings with Sarah's natural advantages would represent the largest and most capable military force in galactic history. If humanity chose to become aggressive, no existing military could stop them. "We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately," Vexcrawl decided. "They must be informed about humanity's true nature and capabilities." "What about Lieutenant Chen?" asked Thraximore. "Should we restrict her access to training facilities?" "No," Vexcrawl replied after a moment of thought. "We continue her training exactly as requested. We observe everything she does. We learn everything we can about human capabilities, and we hope that whatever caused their ancestors to disappear has made the modern humans less interested in conquest." But privately, Vexcrawl wondered if the galaxy was witnessing the return of its former masters. The Gravitech Empire had vanished mysteriously 8,000 years ago. Now their descendants had reappeared, calling themselves humans and claiming to seek peaceful cooperation. The question that haunted him was simple. Had humanity really changed? Or were they simply using different tactics to achieve the same goals their ancestors had pursued through direct conquest? Time would tell, but Vexcrawl suspected that the galaxy was about to learn the answer whether it wanted to or not. Sarah stood before the gravity chamber's control panel, her hand hovering over settings that had never been used before. The modifications were complete. The Academy's engineering team had worked for 3 weeks to extend the chamber's capabilities beyond the original design limits. "Are you certain about this, Lieutenant?" Dr. Yilzen asked through the communication system. 50 times standard gravity has never been attempted by any known species." "I'm ready," Sarah replied calmly. "Besides, this is only about 36 times Earth gravity. I've been building up to this for months." The observation deck was packed with every senior instructor, medical officer, and combat specialist in the Academy. Representatives from the Galactic Council had arrived to witness the test. Everyone wanted to see what happened when a human faced the theoretical maximum gravitational force. Commandant Vexcrawl watched the proceedings with mixed emotions. 3 months had passed since Melgorth's discovery of the Gravitech Empire records. The Galactic Council had been informed, but their response had been to send observers rather than restrictions. They wanted to understand humanity's capabilities before making any decisions about how to handle their return to galactic prominence. "Beginning test sequence," Dr. Yilzen announced, starting at 10 times standard gravity. Sarah moved through her warm-up routine with practiced ease. 10 times standard gravity was now her normal starting point. She performed stretches and basic exercises while the monitoring equipment tracked every aspect of her performance, increasing to 20 times standard gravity. Sarah's movements became more deliberate, but she continued exercising without apparent strain. She had reached this level dozens of times during her training progression. The watching aliens still found it incredible, but they had become accustomed to seeing her accomplish the impossible, increasing to 30 times standard gravity. This was the edge of Sarah's previously tested limits. She slowed down noticeably but continued moving with purpose. Her breathing deepened and her heart rate increased, but she remained in complete control of her actions. Increasing to 40 times standard gravity. Now Sarah was in uncharted territory. The gravitational force pressing down on her was beyond anything any species had ever survived. She stood perfectly still for a moment, adjusting to the incredible weight, then began a series of simple exercises. Her vital signs are elevated but stable, Dr. Yilzen reported. This should be impossible, but she appears to be functioning normally. Increasing to 50 times standard gravity, the chamber hummed with power as the gravity generators reached their maximum output. Sarah felt the crushing force settle over her like a mountain. Every movement required enormous effort. But she could still move. She began the combat demonstration that would change the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. Under gravitational force that would instantly kill most known species, Sarah performed a complete martial arts routine. Her strikes were slow but devastating. Her defensive movements were precise despite the incredible resistance. "She's not just surviving," whispered combat instructor Zektal. "She's fighting effectively." Sarah moved through weapon drills, demonstrating techniques with practice swords and energy weapons. Every motion was calculated and controlled. She showed how a warrior adapted to extreme gravity could maintain combat effectiveness even under conditions that would crush normal opponents. For 1 full hour, Sarah exercised and fought under 50 times standard gravity. When she finally signaled for extraction, it was not because she had reached her limit. She had simply completed her planned training routine. "How do you feel?" Dr. Yilzen asked as Sarah emerged from the chamber. "Tired but satisfied," Sarah replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "That was a good workout. I think I could handle 60 times, but we'd need to modify the equipment again." The observation deck fell silent. Sarah had just casually suggested increasing gravitational force beyond the theoretical maximum of the Academy's most advanced training equipment. Galactic Council observer Keth Prime, a distinguished Altarian diplomat, requested a private meeting with Commandant Vexkral immediately after the demonstration. "Commandant, what we have witnessed today changes everything," Keth Prime said. "The humans possess capabilities that exceed our understanding of biological limitations." "I agree, observer. The question is what we do with this information." "The Council has been debating that question for months," Keth Prime replied. "Some members believe humanity represents a threat that must be contained. Others argue that they should be recruited as allies. But after witnessing Lieutenant Chen's performance, I believe we have a third option, which is, we learn from them. We adapt our military training to incorporate human methods. We transform our understanding of what warriors can achieve." Vexkral considered this carefully. "You're suggesting that humans become instructors rather than students?" "I'm suggesting that Lieutenant Chen has demonstrated techniques and capabilities that could revolutionize galactic military doctrine. The Academy exists to train the best warriors in known space. She has shown us that our definition of best was far too limited. The decision was made within days. The Academy would implement new training protocols based on human methods. The gravity chamber would be reclassified from a punishment device to a standard training facility. Additional chambers would be constructed with gravitational capabilities reaching 100 times standard gravity. Sarah was promoted to senior instructor and given responsibility for developing the new training programs. Her first class consisted of the Academy's most elite students, volunteers who wanted to push beyond what their species considered possible. "Welcome to Advanced Gravitational Combat Training," Sarah announced to her first class of alien students. "Before we begin, I want you to understand something important. What we're about to do will challenge every assumption you have about your own limitations." The class consisted of 12 students representing 6 different species. They were all experienced warriors who had volunteered for experimental training. None of them fully understood what they had signed up for. "We'll start at 2 times standard gravity," Sarah continued. "For most of you, this will be difficult but manageable. The goal is not to match human performance. That's probably impossible for species that didn't evolve under extreme gravity. The goal is to discover what you can achieve when you stop accepting artificial limits." The first session was a revelation for the alien students. Under increased gravity, they had to completely rethink their approach to movement and combat. Techniques that worked under normal conditions became impossible. They had to develop new methods adapted to the challenging environment. This is how humans think about training, Sarah explained as her students struggled through basic exercises under doubled gravity. We assume that normal conditions are too easy. We seek out challenges that force us to become stronger. Over the following weeks, Sarah's students made progress that amazed the Academy staff. Beings who had never imagined functioning under heavy gravity learned to fight effectively at 3 and even 4 times standard gravity. They didn't match human performance, but they exceeded what anyone had thought possible for their species, the O. Humans are teaching us that we have been setting our own limits too low, reported Master Sergeant Kriegsvor after observing several training sessions. Their approach to training is fundamentally different from anything we've seen before. Word of the Academy's new training methods spread across the galaxy. Military leaders from dozens of civilizations requested information about human training techniques. Some species began constructing their own gravity chambers based on Academy specifications. Sarah found herself at the center of a revolution in galactic military doctrine. Her training methods were being adapted for use by species throughout known space. The Academy had become a center for research into the absolute limits of warrior development. "We've learned something important," Sarah told Commandant Vexkral during one of their regular meetings. "Every species in the galaxy has been underestimating their own potential. You've all been training for what you thought was possible instead of discovering what actually is possible." "And what is actually possible?" Vexkral asked. "Much more than anyone imagined," Sarah replied. "Humans aren't special because we're naturally superior. We're different because we never learned to accept limitations. Earth taught us that survival requires constantly pushing beyond what you think you can handle." 6 months after Sarah's first gravity chamber session, the Academy graduated its most capable class of warriors in recorded history. Students who had learned human training methods possessed capabilities that exceeded the previous galactic standards by enormous margins. The ceremony was attended by military leaders from across known space. They watched as graduates demonstrated combat techniques that would have been considered impossible a year earlier. The Academy had not just adopted human training methods, it had proven that those methods could transform any species willing to embrace them. Sarah stood before the assembled crowd, wearing the insignia of a master instructor. She had become the youngest being ever to achieve that rank at the Academy. 1 year ago, this institution used gravitational force as punishment, she announced.